Very thankful to Chris, CEO and President of Royal LePage Signature, who I have been having the honor and pleasure of hearing him speaking about real estate and investment many times. And you might have, some of you might have heard him on podcast or stage. Chris, really appreciate your presence.
My pleasure. It's exciting.
And this presentation that you put together for us for today.
Super.
I just leave it to you if you can tell my audience a little bit about yourself and then start the conversation.
Sure.
That would be good.
That's great. Well, I've been in business and real estate my whole life, really. My family's been doing it for, I want to say 100 years, it feels like, but it's close to that. And so we've had a lot of experience and success in real estate, and so we enjoy sharing that experience and education with people and helping them make decisions on what might work for them in the future, and sharing a little bit about what works in real estate so that you can be confident in your plans and what you're doing. And then obviously meeting with Ed one-on-one at the end or at some point in time we'll take it deeper, but I'm going to give you kind of the historical high-level view. And we personally invest in residential real estate ourselves and have for 75 years roughly. And so we've seen lots of ups and downs, and we can talk a little bit about that. But the view of the world we have for real estate is patience is profitable, is what we like to say. So that's why you're going to see a little bit about that today. So I'll take a few minutes, share a few slides, and then we'll answer some questions. And hopefully, at the very least, the food and the wine is excellent. So you've already had a good day. So what I say is almost irrelevant, but hopefully it's an added bonus to the good food and wine. As I say, patience is profitable. So if you look back, what we like to do is we like to use data to help us better understand what goes on in real estate. And the further you look back, the better you get to understand what's going on. And so this tells a story from 1980 all the way to today. And this is how real estate prices have behaved for over 40 years. And it's pretty amazing to see that it doesn't go up in a straight line. We all love our investments just to go straight up. Wouldn't that be fun? Well, it'd be kind of boring. This looks more like our heart rate on an early morning espresso. So you can see back in this area here on the far side of the charts, this was the toughest time in real estate that we've ever experienced, which is back in the 90s. Late 80s, early 90s. And what happened is when real estate values take off too far, too fast, what we have to kind of give back that pain. So a lot of things has been learned over that time period, and then you can see moments in time here where things started to get out of control, and then either the government or the Bank of Canada stepped in and sort of helped fix the problems. So the good news is there's still going to be volatility in real estate, but you're not going to have to experience what we look back as one of the toughest times in real estate from 1989 to 2000. This tells us a little bit of story. You can see here this is what happened in 2001 through COVID, and you can see we had to have a little bit of a correction, and I'll get into it in just a couple more slides here to share what's going on. But really what we want to look at is this dotted line here, this black dotted line. And you can't read it from back there, but it says 6.73%, so almost 7%. If you, through that 40 years, all those ups and downs, the average is a 7% return every year. So the good news is, over time, real estate becomes more expensive. The toughest part is to decide when should I start. As we like to say, the best time to buy real estate was yesterday. The next best time is today. Because what we're going to do is we're going to see, as we own real estate over time, it just gets better and better. But there are moments in time where you can certainly would rather buy here than buy here. And that's why I really like where we are today in this time period. We're going to start, so that's the broad picture. We're going to start narrowing the timeline to help explain what's been going on in the most recent years so that we can get more comfortable with decision making going forward. This goes back to 2018, and everybody, oh God, I wish I bought more real estate in 2018. Right? Wouldn't that have been a good idea? Well, I was in the business in 2018, as you can imagine. I've been doing it for a while because it wasn't that long ago. And I can remember how difficult it was for people to make decisions to buy in 2018. Because in 2017, we had a little bit of a mini bubble. And that mini bubble caused people to go, oh, we gotta hold back. What's gonna happen? Because they brought in the 16-point fair housing plan. And early in January 1st of 2018, they brought in the mortgage stress test, which actually was one of the greatest things that they've done to help stabilize real estate over time. But you could imagine thinking back then, oh gosh, I don't think it's a good time to buy. Prices had just come down from a recent peak in 2017. I'm going to wait. Well, waiting was expensive. Because here we are today. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves. But here we are today sitting in around, we're actually just a little higher now. Prices have come up a little bit, we're right about here. But if anybody's bought real estate from 2021, today they're still in the money, even though we had a little bit of an exciting ride there for a short period of time. But looking back at this moment in time in 2018, when things were a little uncertain because we'd had a little peak in 17, I can remember having conversations with folks like yourself, sharing that, things have pulled back. It's a moment in time where you might want to consider, if you're interested in investing in real estate, it might be a good time. And it was tough to make decisions. I call it the Warren Buffett way of thinking. Right? You buy when people are selling and you sell when people are buying. And that's the opportunity, some of the opportunity in the market we have today. As we dig a little deeper into the behavior of the market, this is June of 2021 right here. So mid-2021, as we were coming out of that crazy time we now look back not so fondly on as COVID. When we were sitting at home, interest rates had dropped dramatically, which I'll show you in the next slide. And things took off. This is February 2022, the last peak. And this is the line here, the black line I want to draw your attention to, because that's 7% growth. So whenever we get far away from where we should be, things get a little bit crazy. And that's, you can see what happened here. Our growth, price growth just got crazy. We had to reset. And the interesting thing is we gave back only what we shouldn't have had. We came right back in line with normal trajectory of prices. Last spring, we got a little bit excited because interest rates started to drop. Last spring, I don't know if you remember, but there was a mini banking crisis last spring. It hardly even blipped on our radar. It lasted for about 6-8 weeks. But one of the largest banks in the world, Credit Suisse, had to be rescued. 3 major, second tier, but major banks in the US had to be rescued. But it happened so fast because they're getting so good at containing problems now with global financial strategy that we feel the pain less. Interest rates dropped quickly. People got excited. Said, oh, this might be a good time. And they jumped in. The reason why I want you to just remember this moment in time is because the idea of interest rate movements causing prices to be affected. So here, interest rates were too low for too long. Remember that cheap money, 2%, that we all wish we locked in at? Instead we took variable rates because that was even cheaper. Well, that's what results in ultra low free money for too long. Confidence builds, buyers come into the market, prices take off. This is when we started raising rates again, March of 2022. And we now know what happens when you raise rates quickly. Real estate values fall. This is really, really critical piece to understand about investing in real estate, is how rates affect the value of real estate, because you're going to feel that difference, and maybe you felt it personally because your own mortgage moved and you're like, ugh, I have a little less budget to spend on travel and more fun stuff. I'm giving it all to the bank in my interest payments. Maybe my home value was $100,000 more 18 months ago than it is today. That doesn't feel great in the moment. but it's interest rate driven. So some people say, well, I want to wait till rates drop before I make a new buying or investment decision. Well, we're going to show you in a second how that affects values when rates drop. We saw it right here. This was a brief moment in time. This is 3 months. Prices jumped $150,000 in 90 days because interest rates moved not even 1%, 75 basis points. That was it, 3/4 of a point. And it jumped values $150,000. So people are looking to save $300 a month on their mortgage payment. Cost them $150,000 if they waited. It's crazy, right, to think about that? That's why it's so important to understand the effects of change in financial policy, what goes on with interest rates, when you're dealing with such a large asset, because it's a big dollar value. So it has fast effect. 10% is $150,000. A 10% move on the average price is about $150,000. So when you think about that, you can eat up a lot of savings by saving on interest rate and pay it out in purchase price. We worked it out the other day. If your interest rate savings was a couple of $100 a month, you'd burn like 200 months in savings by waiting because of the price, the higher price you're going to have to pay. You'll never get that back, right? You can see right here that prices jumped very quickly between January and February of 2020. We thought we were going to have a really hot spring. Like we were worried that prices were moving too quickly. And then as we know, tragically, COVID arrived on our shores. In March of 2020, we had to close the world. Everything shut down. And in order to manage closing the world, closing every economic activity that helps people eat and live and care for their family, they had to drop interest rates to 0 to take pressure off. You know what it was mainly? Mental pressure. That's the goal, is to help people feel like we're going to be okay. The government's going to stand behind us. They're going to do things to help us get out of a situation where I can't go to work to feed my family. Because the sense of panic in that moment was huge, as it should have been. First time in 100 years, we're dealing with a global pandemic. And that's what they did. But look how long they thought they needed to keep the rates low. How many months? Right back here, this moment in time, this little moment. So I'll back up for a second. So we dropped really quickly here in price, just a little blip. But this was March, this is April, this is May, this is June. So 3 months. So in June of 2020, they had dropped interest rates to 0, and we had 5-year fixed mortgage rates went down to 2.5%. They ultimately got even to 1.5, but at that moment it was 2.5. And look what happened. The market stabilized, activity began, we could come out of our homes. June 1, we were allowed to get out of our houses, kind of start to live a little. There was a few shutdowns at this time period, because your payment doesn't move that much when rates move, unless there's a massive rate increase. If your interest was 3% and it's now 6% because you chose variable, of course your costs move. But if it moves a quarter, half, 1%, it's not as dramatic as you might think. So today's values are right here, around 1.1 million. And interest rates, although now they're actually technically a little bit lower than that because they're on their way down, that was roughly 30, 40 days ago. This is the down payment you were needed, this is the cost of your land transfer tax, and this is your monthly payment at this price point. So as I pointed out, as rates drop down, which they're heading this direction, prices are likely, on average, going to head this direction. So you're going to have to pay more for the product, right? Look what happens to the monthly payment. Lower rate, higher price. It's almost exactly the same. So I saved a little bit in my mortgage here and my rates, but I had to pay more for my home or my investment, but my payment ultimately stayed the same. It's amazing, isn't it? And it obviously happens the other way as well, right? So when prices are coming down, even though rates rise, it's fascinating to see where the math works out. Sometimes it's extreme. So when we saw rates go from 2.5% or 1.5%, if you got super lucky, to 4.5% or 5.5%, or actually peaked last fall at 6% for 5-year money. Yeah, that was a big move. I'm sure everybody here has probably had a friend or a colleague or a family member who bought a piece of real estate and sold it 2 or 3 years later, or speculated on a new construction purchase and sold it before I had to close and I made $100,000. I don't know if you've heard those stories or not out there, right? That's not investing in real estate. That's speculating. Yeah. And it's getting lucky. That's not the way real estate works. I wouldn't encourage anybody to believe in that type of investing.
It's gambling.
That's just, like, exactly. We call that gambling.
Gambling.
Better to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
Your odds aren't much better in real estate if you're speculating like that. Long term is where you make real money, real wealth. What we did here is we just took 3%, 5%, and 7% annual appreciation. We took the average sale price of $1.2 million and a 5-year term, because we wanted to show what can happen with very simple growth. Here, I'll read it for you because of the back. You won't be able to see this. This is 1,390,000, 1,530,000, and 1,682,000. So that's 3% growth, 5% growth, and 7% growth. 7% has been the 40-year average. So if you want to be bullish about it and say, well, the last 40 years was 7%, let's hope the next 40 looks like. I don't like to operate that way. I'm super conservative. I prefer to operate with these numbers down here, because this is pretty exciting as it is. Because if you look forward to 25 years, this is what really happens. These numbers are almost hard to even comprehend. I think they're hard to comprehend, to be honest. I look at these numbers, and I'm sure you will too, and go, what? I can't even imagine. I buy a $500,000 investment property or home or condo today, and in 25 years, at 3%, it's worth $1 million. Yep. I'm going to be a millionaire if I'm patient. At 5%, it's worth $1.7 million. That can't be possible. It's simple math. We've just compounded it for you to make it easier to see. But it's absolutely impossible to comprehend, sitting here today, that a $500,000 one-bedroom condo right here in 25 years, our children, our grandchildren are going to have to pay $1.7 million for that if it advances at 5% on average, or $1 million at 3%. Hard to comprehend.
In long term, yeah.
But that is what has been happening for decades after decade after decade. Investing, of course, the beauty of real estate is it comes with leverage. And that's the secret. 2 things: compound growth and leverage. So if we suggest that in 25 years or in any time frame that values don't even move, I buy a piece of real estate, I put 20% down, I have a $400,000 mortgage, and I pay it off over 25 years. You can pay it off faster if you want. We've modeled it out so if you, from your cash flow, if you keep reinvesting your cash flow instead of spending it, you can pay it off in roughly 17 or 18 years. Roughly. But let's say you take it right to 25 and you just take that cash flow and enjoy it all the way along. You'll turn 100,000 into 500,000 if prices don't move. You'll turn 100,000 into $1 million if it goes up at 3%. You'll turn 100,000 to $1.7 million if it goes up at 5%. Hard to imagine. And the reason why people don't invest is because they find it hard to imagine. I find it hard to imagine. I do it every day. But this is what's been happening decade after decade after decade. So important to understand what leverage does, important to understand what a little bit of time does to real estate. Patience is profitable. And to really appreciate long-term investing. We can give you dozens of examples of people that bought 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and the results that they've had. It's really exciting.
Chris, can I say something?
Please.
Yeah, like when we were doing the charts and calculations, at 6.7, which is the average for 40 years, would have gone to 2.3. And I didn't want to put it up there because it would have been like, what? My $500,000 condo is going to go to 2.3 in 25 years? I can't even, I'm doing this every day. I can't even imagine that. But what I just remembered, it was like 2 weeks ago that I helped one of my clients. I have bought the condo for them in 2015 for $510,000. Bought for $510,000. We sold it 2 weeks ago, like in 9 years, for $1 million.
Wow.
It's like,
And it's not a normal market.
yeah, it
Imagine.
is.
This
Right
is
now,
a normal market.
right now it's
This
a
is a normal.
This is
yeah,
normal.
it's not overheated.
We were in an abnormal
Right.
market, right? Which makes this feel uncomfortable.
That's why, yeah.
But this is actually normal. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
18 months ago, that was not normal.
And if he didn't want to sell, he could have used that $500,000 extra to invest in something else. There's so much.
It's so
Money in your
fascinating to
pocket.
me that this happens, right? Because it's, you think about it, it's like, are you sure? Are you sure this happens?
It's just weird. It's shocking, actually.
But it's fun to see. It's fun to better understand so that you can make a decision about your choice of investments, whether you like real estate or not, whether you think it's something for you. But I love sharing this story because I've experienced it my whole life. We experience it every day with clients. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
We could pick any property you want to look at and go back to what it used to be worth and go look at it today, and you'll see it happen. That's actually 2018.
Wow.
That is 2007 or 8. 7, yeah, 8, 10. No, that's, 8. 2008,
Yeah, you're right.
right? So this is the global financial crisis here, if you remember back when things got messy. Canada really didn't feel things too much because our banking system is much different than the US, more stable. And they did move so quickly with their quantitative easing and fixing the problem that we hardly felt the blip. Right? This was 2016, 2007, sorry, gotta stop touching, I forget this screen is very sensitive. 2016, 2017, this is the, this is when the last little bubble we had prior to our recent one, when they brought in the 16-point fair housing plan and they brought in a mortgage the stress test on mortgages, so that's when you had to qualify for 200 basis points more than your rate. Absolutely brilliant. One of the key reasons why we don't have a bigger problem here. Because everybody that has a mortgage today, because that was 2018, we're more than 5 years out now, they qualified at 5.25 because that was the lowest rate that you could qualify at. And where are rates today when you renew? 5.25. It might not feel good if you had, let's say, a 3.5% mortgage rate fixed for 5 years and now you're paying 5.25 because your lifestyle might have to adjust a little bit. But you qualified for it. So the likelihood of you losing your home over higher mortgage rates is much lower. And of course, values, as I showed here, from 2018 to today, as long as you haven't been using your house as a credit card, right? It's been really, really good. So you've built in some equity over that time period as well. This is the exciting thing about real estate. Does it happen overnight? No. Do you get a monthly statement from your stockbroker telling you how great things are or how scary they are? No. But if we put it together and you look over the next 10 years and say, wow, what could this do for me and my family, for my children, for my grandchildren, for myself? Forget about the kids, they'll be fine. It's pretty exciting. At the very least, I'd encourage you to think more about it if you already are, you already have, or starting. Explore it more. Figure out what works for you. Every single person in the room has a different goal, a different situation. So taking now to the next step and figuring out what might fit your needs would be a really great idea. And at the end of the day, you might think, you know what, this isn't for me. But at least you've taken the time to make an educated decision on what's right. So this interest rate conversation is what was causing the bubble. So they had to, here was COVID, they had to drop rates to keep the world functioning. So interest rates, money became super cheap to borrow, right? Super easy, super cheap. Everybody, mortgages for everybody at 1.5%. So everybody went out and started buying houses. But there wasn't enough homes. So we have supply and demand. Remember way back from our Economics 101 course, right? Supply is low, demand is high, prices go up. Demand drops, supply goes up, prices start to fall. So what happened here is, when you see this happening, and we study it all the time, and that's why we saw it coming, when you see this happening, you realize, something's causing prices to take off. So that's a bubble right there. That was the bubble right here, this moment in time. From about this point in time here, middle of 2021 is when rates should have started to come down. They waited too long, but that's when the bubble started. They don't last very long, 7-8 months usually, because they're pretty much on it. But in real estate, it can move, prices can move quick. And so it jumped $200,000 very, very quickly on average. So you see how far off track we got here with prices, how rapidly it rose for too long. The good news is we learned a lot of lessons. So when things start to get out of control, just move this right over here, that was 16, 17, and that was 21 right here. When things get out of control, they generally start making adjustments either to monetary policy, lending policies, whatever it might be that they think will control the growth. And so what we see is they avoid this mess here because they left it too loose for too long, and it got way, way, way out of control. So what happened is it took 7 years to fix this problem. Here, these are 12-month problems, not 4-year problems. So now the recovery is faster and the prices are less volatile. Now, if you happen to buy here in the spring of 2017 or here in February of 2022, sure, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but prices will return. Here it took about 36 months for prices to come back. Here I think it'll be closer to 5 years. No problem. But it really is, a way to predict it is to follow, because Ed shares all the charts, right? That's why we do all this stuff, is when you see how far it gets off of this line, you know we've gotten out of line. When we're below this line, we know it's a great time to consider buying. There are some real estate agents that'll say, if I can't sell your property, I'll buy it from you. Well, the good news is not many people use those services because it's not the right way to sell your home. Right? Because, no, especially if you're desperate, it's not the right way to sell your home.
Would that be like a power of sale if you want like if your house doesn't
No,
sell?
they are
bank takes over?
basically targeting the people who are desperate.
Yeah.
So they have been on the market, they haven't sold, they haven't been able to sell or whatsoever.
Or they're thinking of
Yeah,
selling.
they are thinking like they think
They
that
haven't
with
met
this-
Ed.
Yeah, that too. So they are this message which just gets them to call them. But as you
Yeah.
said, like do they have this kind of cash on hand? What if 10 people call them at the same day and say, well, I want to sell my home? Do you have that kind of money? No, right? And how much are they going to buy it for?
That's really that's the challenge.
Yeah. I have
That's the
had
challenge.
listings that was sitting on the market in 2007. It was around 1.4, and somebody comes and knocks on the door and comes to my open house and says, I'll pay you cash, $1 million right now. So, okay, keep your cash. It's okay.
Yeah.
Take it out.
That's why you don't want to call those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what they
Good
and
question, though.
they go and try. You know, they knock on 100 doors. One of them might be desperate and say, yeah, sure, like I need $1 million, just give it to me, I'll go. So, yeah, that's just like a strategy for finding people who are desperate to sell.
Not good.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about like the foreigners, like if you look at the way that our government is handling the real estate issues, is always pointing their finger to somebody else. Like the only way that you can resolve the housing problem in Toronto is to make more homes or stop people from coming to the city or get rid of some people who are here. Like supply and demand. There's no, like you can play around and you can manipulate with interest rates, with this and that, but they're not fundamentally addressing the housing problem. They're saying, oh, there's some aliens coming from another planet impacting our market. And if you look, there's always two things that they say. Either somebody else is doing this, or we're going to tax these people. So either way, they are freed. They have washed their hands off. We're taxing them. Let's tax them. Let's just put some money from them to our pocket. Where is this tax going to go? I have no idea. And they are the ones who are to blame. I haven't seen any other solutions for the housing so far. And if you look at the construction in the last year, it has stopped because of the situation with the market and the pre-construction sales have dropped. The builders have stopped making homes. They're on pause. Imagine like 2-3 years down the road, how much shortage we have. We even with that 25,000, we have so much shortage now. We're going to see much more shortage in 2-3 years, and and they are charging so much. What is it called? The development charges.
Mm-hmm.
We were at Sean was talking about like Toronto is charging the highest development charges in the world. When the prices of pre-construction were lower than the current prices. Right now, price of pre-construction is higher than the current prices. And you're basically speculating on the future, the prices go up. What if it doesn't? And that,
Same with the resale.
yeah, right now,
Chance of your money doubling
Mhm.
buying from
no, it
Canada?
doesn't double. No, not now.
Not now.
Because the prices are so high, the land cost is so high, the building cost is so high, it's not going to be feasible for the builders to sell for any less than this, right? And right now, in this market, you can find, if you're like finding something at $1,400 per square foot in downtown Toronto,
In
like
new
you can
construction.
buy a new construction, you can buy something really nice for $1,200 per square foot.
You can buy something really nice for $950,
Yeah, that too.
right?
So,
So the three takeaways are long-term, right? Understand what interest rates are going to do to the values of real estate, right? and then decide what timing works best for you. And if you think about those 3 factors, you'll make great decisions. And then long term, 10 years from now, you'll come back and shake my hand. Say thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I hope you all do that. For your sake, not for us. Do it for you.